For the next 3 weeks, I'm going to be talking about plotting your novel. So I recently just started a new book, and I'm trying to write it in 1 month. So I had to do a little bit of plotting. I've never been a heavy plotter. Always been more of, just writing the story out. But as I've gotten older, the more books that I've written, the more I see the value in doing some plotting. So for the next 3 weeks, I am going to just share some tips on plotting and just talk about what works for me and maybe what might work for you.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julie Amante channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julie Amante. I'm a women's fiction author, and I like to make videos to hopefully help other writers or maybe inspire you to start writing your own book. So let's then begin talking about plotting. So plotting can be kind of stressful. So again, unless you are a natural plotter, it's a little bit difficult to do, because what you're really being asked to do is to create a story before you create your story, right? So to write down all the things that are going to happen, all the scenes that are going to be part of your story, and to know everything about your characters and who they were in the past before the story started, where they're headed in the future, what the transformation is going to be for the character, what the goal of the story is going to be, what the theme of the story. There's a lot of stuff to think of. And you may just sit there and say, I don't know. All I know is I have an idea for a book, and I don't really know what the story is going to be about yet because I haven't written it. But the good news is that you don't have to be a heavy plotter. So, we think of plotters as having these big outlines, knowing their characters deeply, really understanding everything, and having those scene by scene outline of what's going to happen. And we think of pantsers as the complete opposite. Like, they really don't plan at all. They just start writing and this wonderful story comes out. And the truth is, it's really not either one, right? There are people that actually plot very, very detailed stories, but most people are somewhere in between. So, and that's probably where you want to be as well. You want to have probably a loose idea of what your story is about. You want to plot some highlights or some main turning points in your book, and so that you do know kind of where this book is headed, and then you want to leave some freedom so that you can develop the scenes as they come along. So in the book that I'm currently writing, I wasn't sure really what was going to really bring these characters together, and I wasn't sure about certain scenes, and some things as I was writing just came to me, and I thought, oh, okay, this is what needs to happen. So I like having that happen because it just makes writing more fun. It makes it more exciting for me as a writer to be able to discover some of the things. Why is the character doing certain things? What does the character know about this topic that I may not have really thought of before because it wasn't a fully formed person yet? I hadn't actually spent any time with that character, so I didn't know a lot of the things, and I do discover a lot while I'm writing. So somewhere along, completely plotted 50-page outline to nothing at all is where you're going to be, somewhere in between. So first, let's talk about why it's a good idea to plot. Okay, so even if you're not a plotter, you're like, oh, what's the point of it? Why do I really want to do it? Well, the main thing is it does give your story some structure, right? So you know what the story sort of is going to look like. It has some form. The other thing is that it helps you to avoid plot holes where you're writing and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, I don't really know where I'm going with a scene, where I'm going with this story. So it helps you to avoid that because you already have that map, you have that structure. And then the last thing is that it really helps you to create better characters, stronger characters, better developed characters, because you do know a little bit about the characters, or at least what the character wants and where that character is headed in your story. Okay, let's actually start talking about the characters, right? So again, one of the reasons you want to plot is because it helps you create better character. Story is always about the characters, right? So it's always about characters, so it's a good place to start. And you want to know as much as possible about them. At least, how did they get to where they are when your story starts, right? So who are they? You don't have to know everything. You have to know what cereal they eat and all that. So some people like to fill out these huge character charts. You can definitely do that if that helps you to understand your character better. There are fun activities like interviewing your character, just pretending that you're talking to them and typing up questions and asking them about their personal experiences in life and who their siblings were and how did they get along and what was the most challenging for you, you know, growing up. There's all kinds of questions that you can ask your characters, but you don't have to do that. You just do have to know a few things about them. And this is what I'm suggesting. The first thing is, who are they really? Like deep inside, who is this person? So you may be writing about a school teacher. The school teacher who's a mom and has kids and, you know, leads a normal American life. Okay, let's say that's just your character. Okay, so but that doesn't really tell us like who really is this person? What is this person? What is this person like inside? Like maybe, you know, like what does this person dream of? What makes this person a good teacher? Why did she choose this profession? Did she just fall into it? Or was it something deeper that she wanted to serve, wanted to help kids? What is it? So who is this person really? A lot of times, as you know, you've learned maybe in the past through watching some of my videos and some of the people like Michael Haig that I've quoted, our character pretends to be a certain person. So your character has a mask on, okay, that they go out into the world with, and this is who they pretend that they are. But then they have another person, so like their true person, the person that they really are inside, that they might fear showing to other people. Maybe this character is a super creative person. Maybe this character really wanted to do something different, wanted to fly and become a scientist and be into space, you know, but instead became a science teacher, let's say, because they weren't able to get the education or they didn't have the grades or, you know, something, right? There's something else that who the character is. So who is this character really? That you need to understand that. Like, who are they? What makes them do the things that they do? The second question is, what has to change so that this person can transform into the person that she's supposed to be? During the journey of your story, your character is going to transform. Your character is going to become, hopefully, more of the person that she really needs to be. So during the story then, what has to happen so that this character can become who she really wants to be? Not that she has to become a scientist, okay? So she's already got her career, she's already a teacher, she's already a mom, right? That doesn't mean that she's going to now change. It could be that she could. I just actually watched a movie very similar to this. Maybe that's why I'm thinking of it, about a man who wanted to be an astronaut, and he applies and applies and applies to NASA, and then finally, years later, like 12 years later, after he's gotten married and he has kids, he actually gets accepted into the program and becomes an astronaut. So based on a true story, so it really did happen. But so it's not, I mean, she could still become a scientist then, right? So she could still do that, but that's not actually what I mean. Is what kind of things have to happen though, so why did she want to become a scientist? What is it that she wanted to share? What is it that she wanted to express? And how can we make that happen during our story? What things can happen so that she can transform into this person that she dreamed of being or she wants to be? You as the author have to be able to place this character in situations where she'll be tested, right? So maybe what she wanted to be was super competent, or maybe she wanted to solve something, a problem. Maybe her mom had cancer and, you know, she wanted to be able to contribute to solving, you know, to finding a cure for cancer. Maybe that's what it was. So maybe she doesn't have to become a scientist, but maybe she has to deal with that situation. Maybe that sense of not being able to help her parent, of not having any control. Maybe that's really the problem. So spend some time thinking about what is really going on with the character. How deep can you go so that you can understand what needs to happen to help her transform so that she can be the happy, fulfilled person at the very end of your story that she needs to be. So all the other things, the hair color, the eye color, all the other little things about characters that we tend to focus on and obsess about, it's honestly not important. It doesn't matter the color. Give her any color eye you want, right? It doesn't seriously matter unless there's a certain genetic, or you want her to look like a certain parent or whatever, but it really doesn't matter. That's going to develop during your story. Just stick to it. So if you do give her brown eyes, make sure she has brown eyes throughout the story. A certain cut of hair, make sure that that stays the same unless she cuts her hair or does something different during the story. But those things are really unimportant, and a lot of times we're like, oh, I want to make sure that I know all these things, and that's can come later. You will develop those as the story, as the story progresses. You'll choose a car, like what car does she drive? Doesn't really matter. Try to fit the personality. If she's a teacher, she's going to have a conservative type of car just because she needs to take her kids in. She might have a van, right? Just have a van because that makes it easier for her to put her kids in, for her to take her school supplies to school. So just think logically, like what would be the best vehicle. You don't have to know a million things at the beginning of the story, but as the story develops, you want to make sure that everything fits pretty well together. Okay, and then the last thing, which actually would probably be the second thing that I would ask myself, is what is keeping the character from being who she really is? So what's keeping the character from being more in control, or being whatever she would have been had she become a scientist? What is keeping her from doing that? That will help you, if you know that, to be able to create the scenes that help her to transform to be more of that person. By knowing these three things, you will come to understand the character, you'll come to understand the character's motivation, and that is all you really need to start writing the story with this character. It'll help me to drive the story, to know how this character is going to behave no matter what situation I put the character in, because I know who she is, I know what she wants, I know what it's going to take for her to transform. So I know how she's going to react. I know how she's going to react when somebody comes and asks her something, or demands something of her, or challenges her to do something. Knowing what kind of person she is, I'm going to be able to write the scene because I already know who this character is. Okay, the second reason that we want to plot, again, is for structure. And this is the most obvious reason. It's what most people think about when they think about plotting. It's that it gives us a framework to follow, right? We know the main points, the main highlights that we need to get to within our story. So we know, like, what's the first turning point where things are going to change for this character and she's going to start doing something different. We know sort of the middle of the book, right, where the most, the climax of the story is going to happen, where she's going to have to make a major decision. She's not going to then be able to go back to the person she used to be. She's going to have to move forward and achieve her goal or die trying, right? So we need to know these main events, and that gives us our story a little bit of structure. So we need a few plot points, and what we need to know then is what is going to make a significant plot point, because that's what we want, is just these major turning points. And again, we may not know right at the beginning of the story, like what are going to be these important turning points in the story, because if we haven't started plotting yet, that we don't know yet. But we can ask ourselves some questions, right? So what events might create some important consequences for this character? And then we could say, okay, well, let's put that in there then. If this is going to challenge the character here, let's put that event in here. Maybe she gets an opportunity for some reason to do something with some scientists. Okay, well, that is going to challenge her because maybe she doesn't have the time. She's teaching. Maybe she's going to have to take some time off teaching. She doesn't want to do that because she has to pay her rent and take care of her kids, right? So whatever is going to create some kind of consequence or challenge, we want to add those type of things in there. Put those in there. You don't have to do it later. You can maybe change it around and move it, but think about, what can I do that might make it a little bit more challenging and create significant consequences for the character. These significant moments will impact your story and get you closer to that transformation that you're headed towards at the conclusion of your story. And the more of these significant consequences moments you have, these plot points that you have, you'll start seeing that the story starts to take shape. Once you have enough of them, then you can start adding extra little things like, oh, I'm going to put a little twist here. I'm going to add a little subplot here. I'm going to do something different. Once you have the shape, you can add little things to it. More conflict, more emotion, more consequences, you know, so that it becomes a fully fleshed out. Again, it doesn't have to be completely, like you don't have to have a million plot points, but if you have just a few of them, and then add extra little things in between, you're going to start seeing the shape of your story. And then you're going to be, and then that gives you enough to start writing. It gives you that map to start writing. And the last thing is that by doing this, it helps you to see the plot holes that could develop within your story. So if you have certain plot points, you can start seeing maybe some inconsistencies. So if you're saying, you know, that she is going to take this opportunity to work on this project with some scientists. I'm a real scientist. And she's going to decide to, you know, get help with her kids so that somebody's taking care of her kids and she has more time to develop with this. But then later on, you say, well, she would never leave her kids with anybody for whatever, right? I don't know. I'd have to, I'm creating the story out of nothing, and it's obviously not the story that I'm writing. So you want to, make sure that the character is not being inconsistent, make sure that you're not having any plot holes. So since I don't write a scene by scene outline, sometimes it is harder for me to see these plot holes. The more you can form an outline, the more you do have more plot points, so that it's a more complete story, the more you'll be able to see those plot holes. I tend to not be able to see them until I'm actually writing, because I don't have a lot of them. I have just very few things that I think are going to happen. I have some key points that I want to hit. I know definitely what the climax of the story is going to be like. Of course, I know the beginning, I know the end. I know a couple of things that might happen in between, but I don't have a lot of them. So again, the more that you have, though, the easier it will be for you to see, like, oh, this is inconsistent. This isn't going to work. This is going to lead me in a different direction. I don't really want to have this, or maybe I don't want to have this subplot because it might take over my story. You'll be able to see more of that the more plot points you add to your outline or to your structure. My point today is then that it's important to plot, to have a very basic plot. It increases reader satisfaction because you'll have a more cohesive story. It'll actually make you happier as a writer because you'll know more of where you're going. You'll really understand your character. You'll know how this character is going to, what the journey that the character is going to go to, and how exactly they're going to change from who they are to who you want them to be or who they need to be. And, you know, our reader is going to notice, okay, this is going to make a better story for them. Not necessarily. I mean, yes, we love to read stories that flow well, that seem to be structured well, that it makes sense. But, you know, any published book that has gone through editing and gone through, it's going to have that, because other people are going to say, hey, you have a plot hole. So before it becomes a published book, it's ironed out a lot of these issues. But it'll be a lot easier for you, and a lot less editing and a lot less changing of your story if you take the time to do some plotting, really understanding your character, really understanding your plot and where it's going. So next week I will talk more about, again, more about plotting. I'll have my second video on that. And so until then, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit the like and the share button. And again, hit the subscribe so that you'll know next week when my next video comes out. All right, see you then.